But you mentioned the Golden State Warriors, CC, and obviously that's going to be the story today. We had the Golden State Warriors defeating the Memphis Grizzlies 121-116 last night in the play-in tournament. Jimmy Butler looked like playoff Jimmy, 38.7 rebounds, 6 assists. He was all over the floor, and Steph Curry added 37. The Warriors earned the 7th seed in the Western Conference. Now they head to a best-of-7 first-round series with the Houston Rockets beginning on Sunday. That series is obviously going to be in Houston. Cece, what was your big takeaway from the matchup last night?
My big takeaway was that's exactly what Golden State envisioned when they made the trade for Jimmy Butler during the trade deadline, right around the All-Star break. Like that was the reason why. You had the two combined for 75 points, that being Steph and Jimmy. In postgame, you heard Jimmy refer to Steph as Batman and him as Robin, and that's going to be how this team tries to win games throughout the course of the postseason. Remember, they combined for 66 points against the Clippers, albeit in a loss in overtime at home in the final regular season game. Last night, they combined for 75 points, but it's what it looked like. Jimmy Butler got it going early. 21 of his 38 points came in the first half. 22 of Steph Curry's points came in the second half. So you can see there was that balance. And from possession to possession, when you watch Steph Curry, it's perpetual motion. That guy is running all over the court. There was one possession where Steph Curry, and they tracked it based on next-gen stats, he ran 143 feet. 143 feet in a half-court set in order to get an opportunity for a corner three. We're showing it on ESPN2. But it ends up being an and one from the corner. But Steph Curry at this advanced age can't do that every single time down the court, which is why you have Jimmy Butler.
Right.
You have an opportunity to give Steph Curry a break, being able to get the ball to Jimmy in isolation. He's going to get a bucket or get to the free throw line. And so, to me, that's the importance of Jimmy Butler. Not just being able to have somebody that can shoulder the scoring load, but somebody that can give Steph a break throughout the course of the game as it ebbs and flows, and not have everything from an offensive perspective have to depend on Steph Curry being great every trip down the court.
So heading into these playoffs, so much of the conversation that we've had was about Luka and about the Lakers and about their chances and what it would mean if in the season that Luka was traded from the Dallas Mavericks, he goes on and wins the title with the LA Lakers, about LeBron's legacy, etc. And we touched on what this would mean for Steph Curry if he's able to go out there and get his 5th. But I don't think we've really isolated enough how consequential Jimmy Butler to Golden State could be for these playoffs. And I know based on seeding and Golden State falling into play-in action that we didn't talk about them as much as we have talked about some of these other teams. But he is like a man on a mission. We know that Jimmy Butler can always step it up in the postseason, that when the stage is the biggest, he finds himself playing his best basketball. But listening to him post-game talk about how Steph's trying to get his 5th and he's trying to get his, he's got that chip on his shoulder. And to be able to add somebody like that to a team that does have that championship DNA, to Steph Curry, to Steve Kerr, I think the Golden State Warriors are a team that people should be afraid of.
Yeah, it's a team that people should be afraid of, but make no mistake, they got an all-day sucker with the Houston Rockets and with Ime Udoka. They're well-coached, they're young, and even though you got a lot of young cats, they're in early 20-somethings, but those guys play disciplined basketball, and they can get up and down the court. They can play with pace. They have a level of toughness. They have a level of grit. And maybe the most understated quality about that Houston Rockets team is the level of physicality. But if we're being honest, when you watch that game last night, it's about the greatness of Steph and the greatness of Jimmy Butler. But it's also about the Memphis Grizzlies not being buttoned up, not having the requisite attention to detail that you need in order to rise to the occasion when it comes to playoff basketball. And the perfect microcosm of that is what we saw in the final play of the game where they get a 5-second violation. They advance the ball to half court with the timeout, and they can't get the ball inbound, Smalls. And we heard from Memphis Grizzlies interim head coach Thomas Isolo last night on what happened on that final play. Take a listen.
Desmond was the first option on that. There was a small window for that. I think Jimmy Butler made a small defensive error. Looney was on top of it. Did a good job right there. There's a small window, but it's difficult because you can see Butler hesitating for a second there, and that was the window for to throw the pass. We didn't, and after this, they were in perfect position to take out the second options.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they can go through the X's and O's of the play, but the reality is that everybody on the court has to be aware you have no more timeouts. You got to get the ball in bounds. The fact that they didn't get it in bounds is absolutely egregious. Now, John McGrant also talked about it post-game, and he said, Yeah, I wasn't worried about somebody calling a foul on me or a holding call on Jimmy Butler. I wasn't worried about that because he wasn't the number one option. Mm-hmm. And when you watch the play, it's clear that he doesn't have urgency like he is the number one option, and you wonder, had he done something different in that moment, maybe it clears it out for somebody else to get a clean look for them to inbound the ball. But that is absolutely egregious. They don't have anybody to blame but themselves for that one. You can try to pit it on the refs, but the Memphis Grizzlies gave up the ghost when it comes to that play and overall when it comes to how they performed last night. They have to be better if they're going to expect to be in the postseason. If they're going to try to get into a 7-game series with OKC, their performance at home on Friday night is going to have to be a lot better than what we saw yesterday. You got glimpses of it in the third quarter where they mounted a huge comeback after being down 20, so give them credit for that. But they've got to play a lot better in terms of not making the mistakes that make you easy to beat, especially in the critical moments.
And especially when you're going up against a team like the Golden State Warriors, who does have that seasoning. And when you go up against an opponent like that in a consequential moment, even though Steve Kerr said it took 83 games for us to round into form, but we got there, those teams you're going to give the benefit of the doubt to. Mm-hmm. And your window to execute is going to be small. You don't have a huge room for error. So when you have a situation like the inbounds last night with, what was it, 5.4 seconds left, you have to be flawless. You have to be disciplined. And what is part of the conversation that we've been having about the Memphis Grizzlies all season long? You get flashes of it, but consistently you haven't been able to see that from them. And at this point in the season, in the postseason, that stuff will expose you. And we saw it last night with Memphis.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Memphis hasn't beaten a team in the Western Conference with a record over 500 since January. Conversely, the Golden State Warriors, since the All-Star break, have the second best record in the West. They're 23-7 in games with Jimmy Butler. That's the contrast. That's the difference. So that's why I was confident in saying that the Golden State Warriors will win. I expected that Memphis would put up a fight because this is essentially a playoff game, even though it doesn't count on the playoff record. It's a playoff game.
Yeah.
You're trying to fight to extend your season.
There was that intensity.
And for Golden State, they want to get as much rest as they possibly can. Steve Kerr talked about it a little bit post-game. He said, listen, we've been playing in knockout games for the last 3 weeks. Their playoffs has already started. So being able to get your guys 4 days rest before the actual playoff starts is critical, especially when you're talking about guys in their mid and latter 30s, Draymond, Steph, and Jimmy. So that was a huge game for the Golden State Warriors to bank, getting out of the play-in for the first time since the invention of the tournament. The Golden State Warriors haven't had a lot of success in that format, but they're actually in a playoff series now, and they can focus on doing all of the things to take care of their body to put themselves in the best situation so they can have success. But if you're Memphis,